live. Good evening, Facebook family and friends.
Hello. Good evening.
This week, you have our guest and who's becoming a regular and a pro at this, Miss Aiyana Tabb, with us this week for Couples Coaching 101. And this week, we're going to dive into Parental Power Part 2. And before we do that, we would like to give our disclaimer that this is a public forum. Anything that you share and post in the comment section is public and that all can see. If you have a private matter, please send us an email to lifewithoutlimitscc@gmail.com, and please share the video with others so that other people can benefit and listen to this information. So last week, Aiyana gave an overview on parental power, and she started off with some things that parents should know. So do you want to give a couple highlights on some of the things that you hit on last week?
Yeah, just to kind of review, for the first point that I made, things parents should know, as she just said, yelling doesn't work with all kids. You do have to put your foot down so that they know you mean business, but you want to have a good balance between being strict and being lenient. So, you can have a good relationship, and you being too strict would just make them just want to be sneaky and do things behind your back. And so the second point that I made last week is what I learned from being a child. And I learned that your parents really do have your best interests at hand. They're always going to put you first and make sure that you're good. And they always going to have your back, even when nobody else does. And for kids, it'll take you a minute to realize it, because you always think, oh, my friends got my back, da 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 da. But as you grow up, you'll really see who really has your back.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I also learned that it's okay to argue, just getting feelings out, disagreements, normal, typical stuff in any type of friendship or relationship or anything of that sort. And I also learned that kids see their parents as superheroes, so we forget sometimes that they have feelings also, and we'll do things that hurt their feelings, not even thinking that it would hurt their feelings, and knowing that if the same thing happened to us, we would definitely be upset. My third point was the hardest thing about being a child. The first thing I said was the extremely hardest part was being told no, and there's nothing you could do about it, and you could throw a fit, and that might work with your parents, but that don't work with my parents. So yeah, it was nothing I could do. And then the second hardest thing was not being treated your age and being treated like a child, even when you don't act like one. It belittles you. It makes you feel younger than what you are. And who wants to feel younger than what you are, especially a teenager, You want to at least be treated your age.
Yeah.
So the fourth point that we didn't actually get to go over last week, and what we're going to review today, is things parents just don't understand or relate to. And so the first thing that I put is the generation gap. Parents, this is the number one thing I know for a fact that African American parents say is, back in my day, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, we didn't have this. My mama, she didn't do this, da da da, she did this, da 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 da. And that's kind of their justification, probably for telling you no or punishing you or something of that sort. But it doesn't really solve anything, Things have changed so much within the generations, from when she was a kid to even when I was a kid 10 years ago. Things have just changed so much, like you wouldn't believe. Things change every day, music, style, trends. And so sometimes it was hard to get my parents to understand that the things that I wanted to do were trendy. You kind of want to keep up with what's in style, kind of ride the wave a little bit. But for me, I try to do my own thing within the trend and things like that. So that was really a hard thing, getting them to understand the trends. And when they say, like back in my day, and comparing their childhood to our childhood, it's like comparing apples to oranges, as my father would always say. And you can't compare apples to oranges. I can't compare what I did as a child to what she did as a child, because the situation and circumstances were completely different. And so that's one thing that you really shouldn't do, is comparing anything at all. Not even just the generation gap. And the generation gap, I got that from one of my African American history literature. I think it was literature. Anyway, one of those classes. And that was the main thing that we talked about within that last quarter of school. And we read a particular story about this mother who was a little on the... she was single, so she acted single with many different men and didn't really care to hide it from her children. And, maybe back in the day, maybe that was okay. Today, that's really not okay, especially as a mother. You got 3 kids looking up to you. And so, her kids were just telling her, like, Mom, that's not okay. Da-da-da, that's just not acceptable. Da-da-da. And, she didn't see the problem in it. It's like when my dad... He does this all the time. He wants to wear shorts with Timberland boots. And we just tell him, Pop, like, you can't do that. That's not okay. That's not the style. And he doesn't see nothing wrong with it. And that's part of the problem. So, yeah, everything definitely changes.
Excellent. That's really some good points that you brought out, particularly with regard to the generation gap. And I think... the whole thing with the story that you shared about the mom, in much of our culture or in history, it hasn't been acceptable. But in small pockets of communities, it has become more acceptable for that type of example. And that would be a question of someone, I guess, really trying to sit down and talk to their kids about their value system and that sort of thing, or someone that is mentoring or that can openly discuss that sort of thing with the lady and the kids. But certainly if her kids were coming to her to say, Mom, that's not cool. And you raised a really interesting point, because I know when you mentioned last week that that kids feel like their parents are superheroes. I mean, when that plays such a value on how you all view us as parents, and that makes it like even harder to be a parent, because it makes it harder, but it makes it harder because now I want to do better. Like thinking that my kids really view me as a superhero, then I don't want to mess up. And part of being a parent and being human is messing up. Yeah. And so oftentimes we do make mistakes and we mess up. And the generation gap, the generational thing, and I think for us in our household and our experiences, the hardest thing in our family with the kids growing up into from being school and preteens into the teenage years is finding that balance, that work that we could all agree upon, that that balance between what's trending, what's popular among the young kids now, and what was in line with our value system versus our spiritual value system, our personal and moral value system. So our financial value system, all of those things come into play. And I do remember one time when Aiyana was, after she had, she was promoted from 5th grade to 6th grade. I said, you're going to middle school. And they say this about college, you know, it was a TV show about it. It's a different world. You know, we had that talk that when you go to middle school, it is definitely a different world. And it's in this day and time, at each next phase, it is so much different from, like you said, when I went to school. So I remember having that conversation that you're going to see kids from all walks of life, because in middle school, that's when you get to see different feeder schools going into one big school. That's right. So you don't see the same kids necessarily from the same community. You start seeing kids from across the county or across different neighborhoods. And then in high school, you really start seeing people from across the county. But I remember saying, you're going to see kids that don't have as much as we have. You're going to see a lot of kids that have as much as we have. And you're going to see kids that have way more than we have. Here we are. This is what the Tabb family household can do and where we are. So we have to find a balance in that. And so sometimes, you know, we had those crying moments of, well, so-and-so got it, or they did this and they did that. And I was like, we live where? What's our name? And, you know, now it's kind of, I think the kids accept that a lot more, and they joking, but it used to make them so mad whenever I would say that, back in the day, that we live for the Tabb household, and we do. We really try to live a good example and try to stay true to what our core values are. I know of some situations where parents have really extended themselves financially because they wanted their child to look and have the same thing as other kids. And I do understand that because there is a big thing at the age, especially in middle school, of being of you're finding your way, you're finding who your friends, you're finding what value system are you gonna really adhere to as an adolescent. So looking the way you want to look is really, really important. But there has to be a way to, that you all can balance that out. And what we did, for example, was we did maybe 2 or 3 pieces that was a name brand thing, and then the rest was just regular stuff, and we mixed it in. And that's the way we kind of did it in terms of like the clothes fashion, because everything got to be name brand when it came to middle school. And I'm like, where does this come from?
It was really only like that in middle school when I really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only time that I really went clothes shopping for everything that I wanted for school at the mall. Was really middle school. Now I go to the mall, I really can't find nothing. They don't have my size. I mean, it's really pointless now. I really rather shop at Target or something like that. I'm really shop where she shop now.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Because Mama about saving some money at like Target and Kohl's Cash.
But with the trend thing that you were talking about that didn't really align with what the Tabb household morals were at the time, I think that if your parents have really instilled those morals into you, when a trend comes up and it's a little bit left of what you're doing and you're more on the right side, then you're not really going to pay attention to it. You're not even going to want to participate in a trend because, that's not how I was raised. That's not things that I do, and it's still stuff like that goes on today where I just look at it and I'm like, y'all could have that. Like, I do what I do, that's just because that's just how I was raised. And clearly, everybody was raised differently. And I'm glad that I was raised the way that I was raised.
Even during those hard times.
Yeah, the being told no. And back then, the only time that I really would be like, well, so-and-so did this, so I would want to do it, was really like elementary school. And then you really wanted to fit in. You didn't even care. You just, your friend had it, you had to have it too type thing. But once you get really through middle school and you mature a little bit, high school, everything really changes. And like you said, how I think the biggest jump is from middle school to high school.
Okay.
For me, elementary school to middle school wasn't really a thing. I was a good child. I mean, I didn't really get in trouble much. And, my friend group wasn't really into the negative stuff that y'all have prepared us for, the drugs or anything of that sort. So middle school, I didn't really see any of that. My parents had told me about it. I'm like, well, where are all the folks that my parents told me about? What are y'all doing? Where y'all at? I didn't really see much of that until about 8th grade. And part of that was because we didn't have like live streaming social media, if you will. We had Facebook where you might post a post, but nobody was, I wasn't really carrying around a cell phone that I remember where I could just get on Facebook all the time with internet. Like it had to have Wi-Fi or I was on the computer type thing. But for now, we got Snapchat and even Facebook Live now where you can post what you're doing right then and everybody sees what you're doing. So with the technology, that's when you started to see more of what people was really doing that you told us about.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So people are doing this stuff on their phones and posting it and sharing it
and posting
Snapchat.
it, and then people get arrested, and I'm like, all the evidence that they will ever need is right on your Facebook page.
Wow. I'm sure we have some police and detectives out there.
Yeah, and I always wonder if they ever come across that, if they ever see that or anything like that, if they even think to review their social media pages. Because, I mean, people pour their lives on it.
Yeah.
And some stuff just don't need to go on.
It doesn't need to go on there. Yeah, there certainly needs to be boundaries in everything.
Yes, there does.
Including that. Well, you have done an excellent job last week and this week with sharing some things that parents should know and things that you've learned and the hardest thing about being a child and things that parents just don't understand, this generation gap, we just don't get. And I would like to say this, that, if it's something, and this can be the tablet of the week, if it's something that you just are not getting, and that you're not understanding as a parent, sit down and have a family discussion and really have a no judgment time where you really, now you might have to pray on this, you might have to meditate, you may have to go for a walk, do whatever you need to do. So when you're in this session, you are listening with an open heart and an open mind, that you're not judging and that you're just listening, because when you really start to see the perspective from the other person, you really can start to understand and empathize a lot with what our youth are going through today, with the things and the challenges that they have, the pressure and the fact that everything is on social media, and you can block somebody and somebody can tell you about it, or they can instant message you or message you, in all these ways that people take pictures of stuff and forward it in a text. Even if you're not friends with them, somebody else may do a screenshot. That's what it's called. Screenshot the actual item. And then now that can be sent in a text, an email, or anything. So anything that's done online. And that's a whole new thing. I mean, we talked about that a little bit with the couples when we went into the whole social media and digital media boundaries and things, because even as adults, we don't always get that right. So that's the tablet of the week, is to find that thing. Ask your youth, your child in your house, what is a couple things that you feel like as parents we just don't understand, we just don't get, and then talk about it and let them know that there are some ground rules before you all do that, that it's going to be no judgment, that you're just going to listen and try to seek to learn. So if we listen and we seek to learn, it actually opens the doors up to have more positive communication. And I do want to recommend 2 books. And these would be things that you can do in your spare time, or make it a family thing. And I think
we made that one a family.
I'm trying to think which one. Okay, so this one we really made a family thing. And I know it's probably backwards because of the camera. But it's called Personality Plus. Personality Plus. They have one, Personality Plus for the workplace, or Personality Plus. They have a couple different ones. But this one, I think, is the original one. I forget which edition it is. But we first read it a long time ago. And I think you guys were in middle school, maybe, when we did it as a family thing. I think we were in middle school. Because I remember actually sharing, so Trey would have been in 7th or something. Grade, I actually remembered sharing some things that I learned about our kids' personality with some of their teachers to kind of help them understand. So it really helped me, because when you can, I guess, understand it,
you can understand,
you know how to respond, right? You understand their actions and you respond. You can respond a little bit better. But anyway, Personality Plus, in the front of the book, there's a test where you can actually take a personality test, and you can see, the author is Florence Latour. Hope I can spell that there. I'll take pictures and post pictures of this afterwards. But the front of the book, you can actually take the personality test, and then there's a scoring in there. And then you can see where you fall. There's 4 main personality types. And we may cover this as some topics, but still I recommend you get the book and do it as a family thing.
Yeah.
So you can score. There are 4 main personality types that she goes over, and you can see. Excuse me.
Really,
go ahead.
It's called the personality profile test. So you probably could find that online if you Google it, because I know I've taken different intelligence tests in school to learn about musical intelligence and stuff like that. So you probably could find it online.
It's probably online somewhere where you could take the test and score it, and you'll see where you fall. And then in the book, she gives you tips on explaining that personality type, and then there's tips on how you respond and you act. So this one is definitely a keeper. This will help you in every relationship in your life, your work life. Yeah, I mean, I know. I'll be like, I know them. That's a something introverted something, and I know how to deal with that because I'm completely extroverted. Anyway, so the next one is how to talk so your kids will listen, and listen so your kids will talk. And this is another old one by Faber and Maslish. I put the whole thing up there. Again, I'll take pictures and send that. This one, I had forgotten about this book. I read this book when the kids were like 3 or 4 years old, maybe, and I completely forgot about it until I needed some new strategies a couple years ago because what we were doing was not working. So I will say this: if you're interested, I know a group. We did the course. There's a workshop for parents. George and I did the course for it.
The parents course.
We did the whole parents course. And I will link you to the information of where you can take the course. Is held right here in Raleigh. They do all kinds of sorts of great things for youth in the community as well. So if you're interested, please send an email to lifewithoutlimitcc@gmail.com. Remember to post and share this video. We hope that you enjoyed the information here, and we will talk to you next week. And thank y'all for having my baby 2 weeks in a row. And remember, we empower the people that build the relationships. God bless. Thanks.